Well, welcome back to Beers in the Attic. As always, I'm your host, Dominic Smith, and across from me is our co-host, Broc Arnies, and we're excited tonight because a couple things. Number one, Broc brought a White Claw.
I
didn't even finish.
Okay.
But we're excited because Emily's here, and Emily is our first guest that brought a beer.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, not the first with alcohol.
Not the first alcohol, but look at that. We saw a beer right there. She said it's all the way from the Bahamas. So on tap tonight, I do have the Society Pupil right here.
That's good.
And you have a...
I'm going basic. I have a watermelon White Claw. I'm taking this back to season 1.
Season 1, I like it.
It makes me feel comfortable.
I like that. So cheers to you right here. Cheers to you, Emily. Thank you. To our official sponsors, we have 2. Oaks Tavern and Kitchen,
where you get 10% off all appetizers.
There we go. And the Barn Brewery.
That's also not official.
Yeah, but we're going to try.
It's official.
Did you say I was the first one to bring a beer?
Yeah,
you're the first 100%. One to bring a beer.
2 beers in the attic.
Someone brought a wine, and then others said, they didn't really want to drink. It is what it is.
It's crazy, right?
We're enjoying it. We're trying to see where people want to go with this. So
of course,
the next person will be like, I brought a whole bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
that would be sick. Actually,
yeah. Actually, Kurt's over there with a couple drinks over there, so that's actually really good. Kurt behind the scenes. He has the whiskey, the drinks, everything going over there.
He's got a Michelob, though. You can't go wrong with that.
He has a Michelob, a Society. I don't even know what Kurt has over there, but
he's got everything.
That's good. Oh, I heard it crack open. There it is. All right. So tonight's exciting. Emily, the reason that we were so excited to have a conversation with you is on your leadership, your thinking, and the creation of your own company. And it started to focus around your own history of your life, of what you've been passionate about. And I know we're going to dive deeper into that because it's going to hit home with me for my daughter and what we can do for students. Mm-hmm. But as we always do on our podcast, we want people to know who you are.
Who are you?
Who are you is the question. It's a deep question, but we don't want to hear the bio. We want to hear the true meaning, the true identity. Who is Emily? Let's hear it.
That was good.
I liked it, right?
Oh, wow. This is I guess I wasn't prepared for this. I feel like my yoga instructor asked me this morning. Okay, who am I? I am I'm a new mom, so I'm gonna go ahead.
Congratulations!
And throw that out there.
Cheers! Cheers to that!
Thank you. Cheers to that. So I have a 10-month-old daughter who's sleeping right now. I also have 2 stepdaughters, 6 and 13. So a lot of fun, a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I would say I am a person just totally motivated by challenge like that. I love adventure. I love freedom. That seems to really dictate my life. And my main goal is to just really figure out how to live life to the fullest. I know that sounds super cliche and I don't mean it to, but I would say that probably describes me. So a lot of I gave my parents a lot of hell growing up. And I don't know, is that okay if I say that on the podcast?
Broc did well. Like Broc was like, let me list everything I did wrong too.
No. I was a very good person.
So, I kind of just bring that, same, it's a little bit reckless energy into, what I try and do every day just to keep things interesting.
Well, that's going to be good because we're going to dive into
kind of sums up our lives a little bit.
Pretty much.
It was pretty
like
much
this. I'm glad that you said it.
Us.
Yeah, so you explained us. It's very, very right to the point. So when we did some searching and we were talking with you on Twitter and all your socials, everything kept coming up with Teleteachers. What is that? What does that mean? Because when we were seeing,
it's like
where's
Teletubbies.
Emily? Teletubbies? I don't know.
I love Teletubbies.
I do. What's your favorite? Okay, quick question. Teletubbies. What's your favorite Teletubby?
I don't actually.
You don't know Teletubbies?
Don't put me on the spot. I don't know their names.
Well then.
Okay. Well, I don't know. They have. I don't know. The sun is like the baby.
There it is. I just wanted to make sure that
super cute. That everybody knew I didn't really know Teletubbies.
Yeah, I had to prove a point.
Fair enough. Okay, you win, bud.
Thank you. All right. So now that we're there, Teleteachers, tell us how you created it. What made you create this company, and how has that been benefiting kids right now?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to have to go back to my speech therapist roots for a little bit. It's
right.
Teleteachers.
Oh,
I know. Sorry. Not to.
Way to go.
Yeah.
You're
And
kicked off the podcast, bud.
focus on Broc.
Cut it?
Cut.
Perfect.
Okay.
Dom's out.
Perfect.
Okay, Teleteachers.
Teleteachers. Yeah.
Teleteachers. I'm just kidding. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's funny that you bring up the Teletubbies or however you say it, because when I first told one of my good friends that I was starting the company, and I said, "What do you think of this name?" He's like, "It makes me think of Teletubbies."
See, I'm not the only one.
He probably knew who they were, though.
Fair enough.
All right.
That's true. That's true. So how did I start this company? Well, I am the daughter of a special education teacher. So I really grew up just exposed to all of the incredible work that my mom did. I grew up being in her classroom, seeing just how she created amazing opportunity for kids with disabilities. And, that's how I originally got into the field of speech pathology. And really, I wanted to be in the field of education, but kind of that, I wanted a little bit more freedom, and I don't know. I just kind of wanted some adventure behind things, and not that you can't do that within education. You absolutely 110% can, and you guys are kind of doing it differently. So I totally respect you. And there's but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be in the field of education. And so long story short, I got my first job out of grad school. I actually ended up working for my mom, and it was amazing. I was the speech pathologist in 15 different districts in rural Missouri.
Oh, wow.
And so
I like Missouri. I went to college in Missouri, so that's why I pointed. I enjoyed
where'd
Missouri.
you go?
I went to a small little school, Kansas City, Missouri. Avila University. Shout out. There we go. No one knows
Avila.
it.
I actually knew somebody that played football at Avila.
It may have been
played
you.
football there. It was
you.
me. It was actually me. How funny. You knew that it was me. I played. What's their name?
Heath Baker.
Heath Baker was my roommate.
Stop.
When I went to Avila, no way. When I went to Avila University, I went in.
What a small world.
Small world. My roommate was Heath Baker for the first 3 days, and then I got moved over
because you want to be with me
to my best friend Jeff. But Heath Baker was there, and now he's Mr. Coyote Shooter himself. Yes, Heath Baker. My first 3 days at Avila, that's my roommate.
Oh my gosh, that is so crazy.
Oh wow!
I love Heath Baker.
Small.
He's crazy.
Small world.
He's absolutely crazy.
Yes. Okay. Small world. Wow.
This is getting great.
Yeah. Roommate for 3 days. Heath Baker. Shout out to Heath. Shout out to Avila.
And Missouri.
There we go. That was great. Wow. Sorry we interrupted you, but we had to do it.
Heath Baker's a social worker now. He's a mental health therapist. Makes
sense.
And a coyote hunter. So I think it goes hand in hand. There we go.
Totally. So rural Missouri, as you can imagine, the educator shortage was just critical, especially in southern Missouri. And so I spent my day driving between all of these 15 districts, providing speech therapy to early childhood kiddos, and totally loved my job. It was my jam. I loved the kids in the schools where I worked, but I could only get to them once or twice a month because I was in my car like 3 or 4 hours a day, just driving along. And this was before there was really before I even knew about online learning or anything like that. And so I tell people actually my mileage check was more than my paycheck.
That's true.
Yeah.
It'd be like that sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So I was given this really random opportunity. This American family living in Thailand reached out to me. They knew a friend of mine and they knew I was a speech pathologist. And they said, hey, look, our little girl's going into preschool over here. There are no speech therapists. Nobody understands what she's saying. Can you like send us some activities to do with her? I'm like, sure, but let's try, let's hop on a video conference. I'd love to meet you guys. And so I had no idea what I was doing or how to do speech therapy online, but I got up at 5:30 in the morning, my time. It was evening their time in Thailand. And it was like the most beautiful session I've ever had in my life, because here I am in rural Missouri having an impact halfway around the world. And so I knew that I wanted to take that type of experience and access and bring that back into the school setting here in the US. So that was really where I started my entrepreneurial journey, my EdTech journey. That led into starting Teleteachers.
Yeah. And so when you created that, how did you get clientele? Like, so like where did you go into? How did you support families? How did you say, I can be here for your kids? 'Cause I think of my daughter right now, and especially during a pandemic, mm-hmm. and she has to go to speech, and it's, some days it's on campus, some days it's on the, on our Zoom. How did you start to create a clientele and say, you know what, I'm here, I'm available, our organization is available because it's going to make an impact for your students' learning, your children's mm-hmm. learning?
Not easily. So I started, I knew that I wanted to develop this model, and again, just very blessed to be able to have a mother who, mm-hmm. Was not only a teacher, but went into special ed administration. So she had worked, with therapy companies and kind of gave me the rundown on what I needed to do. And so I started cold calling every special education director with a job opening on like Indeed.com. And I said, hey, I'd love to do your speech therapy remotely. I'm a speech therapist, and, kind of did the whole pitch. And 2 weeks solid, making like 75 phone calls a day, cold calls, getting hung up on. Nobody wanted this. This was in 2014, and everybody's like, no, there's no way this is going to work. Like, no. And I remember calling my mother and saying, Mom, I can't do this. Nobody's wanting this. And everybody's just like shutting me down. Mm-hmm. And she said, just keep calling. People are going to, the schools need this, mm-hmm. and you can do this. And so like I called for like another week, and one amazing administrator in Alaska, rural Alaska, said,
of all places,
of all places, we don't need teletherapy, but we are absolutely desperate for speech therapists up here. So we'll fly you up from Missouri. You have to fly to Anchorage and then take the jet into Bethel and then take these bush planes to the rural village schools.
Scariest flight, by the way. Scariest flight. I had to take.
Have you done it?
Yes, I went to. We went to Anchorage, actually, right?
And then we went to a couple other places.
We went to a few other places,
Fairbanks and some other spots.
Yeah, as Dominique and I were waiting for one of our flights, it's like a pond hopper plane to where there's a gentleman outside like de-icing it and then starting it like a lawnmower, pretty much. And so you get like, it's like, I don't want to fly on this thing. I have no idea if it's even going to take us across. It's a 25-minute flight, but I don't know what it's going to look like. Anyways, scariest thing ever.
Kenai, I think that's the other place we went.
Kenai, yes, yeah.
And if I don't know if you can see it through Zoom, but if you look at Broc's shoulders compared to the size of that plane, it was about the same width.
No, yeah. It's big guy, and we had to sit next to each other, and everybody was staring at us. I think we had like 4 Red Bulls that morning just to like make it across. And anyways, proud of you. Good job on the flight. I didn't like it. Continue.
I want to know what you guys were doing up there.
Well, we actually went little side story, went to work within a bunch of schools on the focus of what school equity looks like, restorative practices, what we could do to
we toured and gave
enhance.
feedback.
We went and watched all the classrooms and talked to teachers and
talked
students.
A little bit about success criteria, smidge, things like that.
Spent a couple days out there, a couple schools, and went from Anchorage. We did a big presentation in Anchorage, and then flew to these little smaller schools and had a really good time learning with some great leaders out there.
It was a lot of fun. We're supposed to go back, but then COVID hit, and then then we decided to start a podcast. So
COVID hit, and it was cold and small planes.
Here we are. Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever get on one of those again.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome. Well, if you ever do get on another one again, I hear you. It was pretty intense, but it was that opportunity, because she said, come up here, stay in the schools for 3 weeks at a time. I mean, rural Alaska, there are no hotels. There's, you sleep on the school floor. And nice. She said, once you go back to the lower 48, if they want teletherapy between your visits, like, great, we'll make it work. And so that was like the green light to really try. And it was the best experience professionally I've ever had, working with the amazing people and students in rural Alaska. And so that gave me an opportunity as a clinician to work with the kids on site and work, fly back home and try and figure out how this online therapy thing works and how to drive really effective results, similar parallel results. And so that was really the first opportunity. From there, that partnership story with that school grew, and it just kind of grew from there. Ended up, having partnered schools in over 30 states, and just it really spoke to the need of the service once you really figured out how to make it work.
That's awesome. I think you probably saw me lean into the mic.
That's why I leaned back.
Okay, adequate. I think the foundation of your story is awesome, to where you were kind of put in a place that you got exposed to special education pretty early, especially with somebody that's close with you. I have a similar backstory to where I went to an elementary school where my grandma taught in a special ed classroom that was segregated. You had students in there that had autism and that were blind, that were more kind of mod severe. And then at the end of the day, she drove us home. So that's the room I hung out in until I got a ride home. And so that was kind of my first exposure to that. And then you build this love and trust with those students. And then I think as I get older, Dominique's first experience and mine was also supporting in a classroom, because that was an opportunity that was given to us in high school, to where you could support students with learning differences. And then it's kind of weird how that's kind of been our trail. And then as we got hired into education, that's the next step that we followed. It was like, okay, you guys are going to have a small caseload of kids. You're going to follow them around all day, kind of thing. But I think those early exposures, you really see what it's like for students to be segregated in regards to like their learning ability, right? To where you're put in a place to where that learning difference keeps them in a separate classroom all day. And I know that in special ed, you talk about like a least restrictive environment all the time, right? And if you want to be inclusive, the more that they are put in an environment that is inclusive and they're not restricted and they get to learn with other students, the more successful that they are. So I think the question that I have for you is like, what made you kind of dive into, really advocating and being a part of making sure that there's this inclusive education for all students?
Yeah, well,
so that is kind of a lot, but it's
such great perspective, because I think, and how amazing that you both are in leadership positions now, having had that experience. And I think that makes a difference. It shifts your perspective. And so, I would love to see, anytime that I'm speaking with an administrator and they, come from the classroom and they, they know what it's like to work with students who have diverse needs, it's great for everyone. So I would say that what really inspired me to advocate for inclusion, a dear friend of mine, Dr. Robert Pasternak, he says, he's been a lifelong educator over 50 years, and he says special education should not be that special. Right. We really need to focus on how we're working with the general education teachers, and it shouldn't be, oh, those are your students, these are my students. And
I love the language already.
100%.
You know, just having more collaborative models. And I think labels are the worst thing that we can place on kids, on classrooms, on schools. And so the more that we can really break that down and give a sense of shared accountability with the gen ed team for this student's success, you know, I think the better intervention we're going to provide.
I think, no, go ahead. Sorry.
And just the more it will facilitate that inclusive model, because there isn't a recipe for inclusion.
Yeah.
You know, but it all starts with those conversations and shared accountability.
I think that shared accountability piece is like the most important in this. No,
she said removing labels. That's the most important.
Because you have a book about it.
Just saying.
So I think that shared accountability piece, especially when you're talking about inclusion, is huge, because I think a lot of times, and this isn't about like our side or any other side. It's just, I think it's just naturally comes up to where it's like, okay, we're fully inclusive. It's all in the teacher. No, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? Like, it's still a balance. It's still making sure that you're proactive. It's still making sure that you're taking the steps necessary to provide supports to students with learning differences. But also, like, if you're inclusive and you're working as a team, you provide those services to all 20 plus kids in your classroom, right? Like, you are creating a means for every student to access the content provided. And I think that's the big thing there, is like, this isn't a separate gig. Just because we're inclusive, it's not okay, yeah, I have students with learning differences in my class and I only provide supports for them and not supports for the quote unquote regular kids in my class. You're providing supports for everybody, because you want everyone to access the content. And I think the moment people realize that if all students have access to content, you're bridging that gap in their learning, I guess, bridging the gap in their learning gaps, right? Like, you have kids that come to your school that have huge gaps in their learning, and if you provide that support, everybody's going to be able to access the content.
And as you're saying that, and as I'm hearing Emily kind of speak, we say, you know, inclusion, right? And we fight for inclusion, and we believe in inclusion, and we try to figure out as much as many push and supports as best needed for our students. My question, I guess, in the realm of your work, Emily, do people push back on you ever because you are virtual and you're doing some of that work? Do they say like, oh, you're not on the campus, or you're not here with my students, so you can't do this work?
I had another question to that, but go ahead.
But I guess because that, I mean, I could see how this could be super supportive. And especially now, right? Everybody's like, oh man, you hit the money on this one in a distance format. In not a distance format, are you getting pushback? And if you are, how do you get rid of that pushback in the work you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. There's pushback, and there has been. You know, I like to relate, you know, when I was pitching this service to schools 5 years ago, it was like pushing a boulder up a hill. You know, that won't work. How are you going to do this in the classroom? How do you do inclusive models through this? And, you know, I think those barriers are broken down when you just get creative. So one of the problems that we're solving is, I mean, we're not just delivering these really amazing services online. We are solving the educator shortage in many districts,
Right.
where students, just don't have access to the services that they need. And so I think that there's a lot broken down when people see this in action, and when people realize that our students today are technology first students. They may not have been 15 years ago or when we were going through, our primary education, but they are today. And so I think that does facilitate more inclusive practices, even when you are coming to a student on an iPad or a computer.
And you know what? I know that this is true because as I see Kurt behind the scenes over here nodding his head like, yep, I agree. Yep, tech is first. Yep, I like, there it is. So I appreciate that. And I think about that too, because there's going to be days where I look at my daughter. There's days that she's going to be in class or at school. There's going to be days where she might be with grandma. There might be days where she's home here. How do I still get the services she needs? And as I'm hearing you talk about this and we're looking at your work and your idea and your model, you're absolutely right. My daughter is excited right now to get on her iPad. She's excited to get on Zoom with her teacher and go through this process to give her the services and needs that she needs. Right. And I didn't think about that prior. It was only spotlighted to me due to a pandemic. But does she feel comfortable and feel safe at grandma's house? Of course she does. She's never losing an opportunity to become, not become better. She's never losing the opportunity to get what she needs to become the person she wants to be. Right. So I'm like,
this
I'm
digital
really,
format gives her that sort of confidence that she needs.
I mean, look, think of the families we work with, how great would it be to be like, here's a service outside of the day or during the day that is in a virtual format that maybe 100%. We never thought about. I mean, because you're right, Emily, maybe we were pigeonholed in a conversation of like, no, that won't work because you're supposed to be on campus with us and doing these on campus with us and be in the IEP meetings with us and all these things where you're like, well, technically, I've watched students get the services they need remotely. Prior to a pandemic. I think that's your new slogan. Prior to a pandemic, this works. And because I mean that when my own thinking is only vision of pandemic. You were doing this in Chicago prior to the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic. You like that?
I like it. Yeah, it's like a little.
We were the OGs.
Yeah. Look at that. You guys are OGs of distance learning. That's the new slogan over here.
Yeah. No, I like
so,
it.
I mean, and I think there's something to be said. I mean, I certainly have, the angle of speech therapy because that's my background. But, when we look at providing mental health services, I mean, there's a level of, just added comfortability that kids can have accessing this. I mean, as I remember going into a classroom as a speech pathologist, like an 8th grade classroom, and being like, hey, Johnny, it's time for your speech. Like, that's embarrassing for everyone. Nobody wants to be.
I'd be like, no, we're good. Don't call me out.
And some kids did. And it's like, I know, but this adds, I mean, now, I mean, this is a little bit of a random example, but I could be sitting in my speech therapy office and, connecting with Johnny on his iPad without anybody even knowing that, he's actively engaged in a session with his therapist. So, I mean, there's a lot of aspects of this that I think even when kids do return to brick and mortar, that will be better enabled to support them as an education team because we can do it in a more
we have different modes of support
way.
Yeah,
and that's so true. Like when you just gave that example, I remember sitting in 6th and 7th and 8th grade and seeing one of my best friend, I didn't want to try to call him out, my best friend being pulled out of class. And I remember my friends, maybe even myself, saying negative things to him when he had to leave. Because you're young and dumb.
And you get pulled out from the rest of the
group. And you're seeing your buddy being pulled out for whatever it may be. And in that immature state, you were going to say everything towards them.
Yeah.
He hated that class. He never wanted to go.
The only, and I'm not talking about speech. The only reason I struggle with that is because I feel like if you're, and I feel like, you're like, okay, Broc, okay, we're going to cut the podcast now. But I feel like at one point, if you create a space for, if you're inclusive, right, fully inclusive, you create a space where students are comfortable and they know there might be certain days where they can advocate for themselves, right? And you know there's going to be certain days where they get pulled out for a test or potentially pulled out for speech or whatever it is. They know, they take ownership of that aspect of their learning difference and they're confident in it. Instead of hiding it, you know what I mean? Instead of being ashamed of it, to where you're like, hey, don't forget, there's going to be a comp on Friday. I'm going to, when you used to kneel down to a student and say, hey, do you want to get pulled out or not? And that student would be like, pulled out for what? Where previous they'd be like, pulled out? Shit, yeah, you better pull me out. I need your help. That's what I miss.
I mean,
that's what I miss.
It's
to where
the
it's
culture
become
and climate.
100%. I miss that. Like, I hate the fact that like students feel like they have to be ashamed of the fact that they have a difference in their learning and they can't talk about it.
Right. And probably as Emily's seeing, as we're seeing, that should never be the case. Yeah. Right. In my example with my friend when I was younger, it was not a positive interaction. That door swung open. You with me. I hate my job. Yes. You're gonna come do your speech now with me.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
That sucks. That's what we're trying to change.
So that's a culture and climate conversation.
Culture and climate.
I get it. Yeah.
Emily brought the component too of culture and climate. We have 75% of students that say, yes, I'm gonna go. And I'm excited about what I'm going to be able to participate in.
Makes sense.
But we have 25% of our students, and let's go even broader. There might be more students that say, I don't ever in my life
want anybody to know. Yeah.
Look at some of the athletes we work with. You can never. Some of the athletes that we've worked with at our own school, they say, don't you ever pull me. Don't you ever put a different modified test in front of me. Don't you ever make me look different than anybody else in their own thinking. What an opportunity to say, okay, right now is not the opportunity. I have a virtual way to support you that we can do on your time frame to support you. So when we talk about time frames, Emily, and like how we support students, your company, what would this look like for families and students? Is it in the morning? Is it during the day? Is it how does this look like? If so, let's take an example. Broc is going to go through.
Why me?
Okay, I know. As I said, Broc, you're like, why me?
It's fine. I'll own up to it. I got this. So, you and I are going to meet. What's happening?
Yeah. Okay. So Broc is going to meet you, and we're going to go through this process. What does it look like? What's this process look like, and how do you build schedules to support students and their families?
Sure. So I think it's all based off of relationship with the school, first of all.
You're excited.
We can't come in and say, hey, here's our cookie cutter way of doing this, because that ignores the needs of your students and the needs of your staff. So I think the first thing that we do is try and engage with different members of your team and learn how you're currently doing things. What are your challenges? What are we trying to solve together? And then, how do we help a school solve those problems? So if we're, maybe we're placing a full-time speech therapist and a part-time school psychologist, or whatever the scenario may be, we look at, which students are we going to serve through this model? What are their schedules? And then kind of, the scheduling and logistics of it. That's the easy part, but where you really want to do work is getting to know the school community and rolling out this type of program in a way that allows the staff to put their guard down, and to say, these people know what they're doing. They're here to help us. And same with families too. So, I think it's important that for any contractor within a school or any person that's coming in that's not an you know a district employee becomes an integrated part of that team. Mm-hmm. And so the best school partnerships that we've had are with administrators who say, hey, come to our staff meetings. Let us introduce you to these families. Let us help you get to know the students. Mm-hmm. So the logistics of the program are easy, but the relationship building is most important.
And when you talk about relationship building, another thing.
Do you mean like restorative?
Relationships, wow. When you talk about relationship building and all of that work that you're doing, how do your team, or how do specialists get to a point to teach families to not have such a fixed mindset of a disability? How do you tell families that are going through their first time of services, mm-hmm. or their first time of an IEP, mm-hmm. that my
child is not always going
this isn't
to have
wrong,
this,
right? Like how do
they're going to be able to get better?
Yeah, how do you get away from the stigma? And I guess I am an advocate. I am passionate about this work. I work and have great colleagues around me. When my daughter got an IEP, stigmas come quickly. And mm-hmm. how do you coach and how do you teach families through this process? Because I think special education is beautiful, but families don't understand it. My father struggles with the label of special education. He hears special education, he only has one word to it. He doesn't see diverse learning and supports and change to help my daughter, right? And I think that's where maybe even some of my own personal stigmas came with, because I'm looking at my dad, he's saying, oh, blanket statement. Mm-hmm. What do you do as a specialist in supporting the growth and that fixed mindset of families to kind of start to move and change and say, it's not what you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it just, you have to be incredibly empathetic, mm-hmm. and, really try and put yourself in their place and allow space for them to come to those meetings and ask questions and not be in a hurry. I think that's one of the best things that we can do is just give families the time that they need to be able to understand that we're here for the right reasons, that this isn't just a job for us, that we we're here to bring hope, and we're here to share in the successes of their child or of their adolescent. So I think that's just giving it the space professionally, and not being in a hurry. In special education, there's so many deadlines and pressures and mandates, and it's like at the end of the day, those aren't what make the difference in the lives of students. It is the relationships that we build. So, that, and then I think just continuing to collaborate and really making sure that you're available, that you update the parent, that you engage with them in a way that works for them, and ask those questions up front. How do you like to be communicated with? So there's no recipe for this. And special education shouldn't be that special. It's just, really what we need to do is as good humans serving students.
I think the good humans is a great
statement. I liked good humans and serving students, because that serving students aspect, you're never going to forget that, right? Like I think your whole job in education, you're a change agent. Your job is to serve kids and make them better. You have them 8 hours a day. Your job is to teach them. We talk about restorative work. You teach them about behavior. You teach them about content. You teach them about whatever it is that needs to happen, right? And I know Dom had a few questions already, and I don't want to like bombard you as we come close to the end of time of this, but like one of the things that I'm thinking about is when you talk about inclusion and equity, what advice would you give teachers as far as like, you know, if you're in an inclusive environment or you're working towards that, or you're working with, you know, whether it be a small group of students with learning differences in your class, how do you tackle that in regards to making sure that you provide access to all students?
Mm-hmm. I would say just, humble yourself and ask the right questions. Nobody knows how to do this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there they are.
There she is.
Can you guys hear?
I can.
Yeah.
Oh, she wants to be a part of the podcast.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
She'll probably.
Oh.
Do you care if I go like?
Go grab
No,
her.
you're fine. You're good.
Okay, I'll be right back.
No, stop. We'll stay recording.
There we
it's
go.
All good.
There you go.
Aww.
She might need to finish the podcast with me.
That's fine.
She's not having it. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Of
no
course.
worries. We're closing soon anyway,
Okay.
so we're good.
Okay.
I forgot what my question was.
Name?
Madison.
Madison.
Hi, Madison. She's like, yeah, whatever, dude.
Yeah, what's up? I don't like you guys. Yeah, there's a smile. Hi, Madison.
Hi, baby. She's like, yeah, whatever, dude. Give me my binky.
Yeah, right. I don't wanna- So as we're kind of finishing, we were gonna kind of close up soon too. So we'll just kind of wrap it up so you can have a night with Madison. Hi, Madison.
Well, thanks for being flexible. I really
No.
appreciate it.
Of course.
Not at all. We both have kids. We know what's up.
Yeah. So we'll kind of hit you with our ending kind of statement and question, and then we'll kind of
Sure.
We'll meet you eventually one day. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when people are hearing our conversation tonight, Emily, and starting to think about what's next for their students, where could they find you? How can they reach out for your supports? Because it seems like as we look at our own student population, there's going to be families that need you, need what you're doing. And there's going to be families across this country and this world that say, I need these supports. How do families, how do school districts reach out to you and get your services?
Yeah, so our website is teleteachers.com. I'm personally on Twitter at Emily Smith SLP. I love to have conversations with people who are considering this. It's important that, that as we're becoming champions of online learning, that we do it in a way that makes everybody really comfortable, especially when we're looking at providing special education and related services. So my team is incredible. If anybody reaches out to us, we'll make sure that their questions are answered and that their students are really well taken care of.
Awesome.
And we try to always kind of end with that saying, that phrase. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Emily. Why is inclusion important? What's that phrase, that statement you're going to say? Why inclusion
matters?
There we go. Broc wanted to say something.
I just wanted to say something. I feel like I've been quiet for a long time.
Inclusion matters because inclusion is opportunity, and every student deserves opportunity. They deserve to have agency in the world.
I helped. You're welcome, bud.
I did. Emily, it has been wonderful to meet you. There's been so many connections from the wonderful world of Missouri to Avila to, you in Chicago, and Broc had that conversation earlier, to now you in Florida, and now we see baby girl here, and it just makes us say, hi, Madison. It's so good to see you because we love kids.
Hi, baby.
Thank you for taking the time and being a part of our podcast, especially as a new mom. We know that is not easy. A new mom running your own business, working in special education. We say thank you. We applaud you. And we can't wait until we work together again. So I don't know, but we're going to say cheers over here. I don't
Cheers
know if
to
you
you
want
and your
cheers.
Calic
There you
beer.
go, Madison.
Cheers.
All right. Thank you so much.
And for future
Thank
reference,
you.
just tell anybody you're talking to that your baby never sleeps in, and they'll sleep in. The second you say that they sleep well, you're done for.
There we go.